Good evening, everyone. My name is Sunshine Jeffcoat. With me tonight, I have Miss Shannon Erickson, who is representing District 124. Good evening, Miss Erickson.
Hello, Sunshine. It's great to be with you tonight.
Thank you. Likewise. So, if you don't mind, please share with us why you're running. Again, you are an incumbent, so why you're choosing to run again, and just explain your platform as it pertains to public education in South Carolina.
Well, Sunshine, public education is probably one of the most important things that I work on at the State House. I'm an educator by trade. So, as a South Carolina certified teacher, I'm very proud of our education system and all the professionals that we have. And too often they are misunderstood and overlooked. And my job at the State House is to be one of those voices to give those folks in the classroom who can't be at the State House every day a voice about what's going on in their lives, how many hours they put in, how much dedication they have to what they do. Most people know that teachers aren't made, they're born. This is an avocation, a gift. It's not something they do to get rich, although they should be compensated better and definitely treated more professionally. That's part of the largest reason that I'm seeking reelection. For many years in the State House, we have put money into education, but we put money into education and it was going into the big pot, if you will. And a lot of districts didn't either have the opportunity or didn't choose to make teacher salaries and the professionalism in the classroom, the supplies, and even the scheduling a priority. Well, we've got their attention right now. So the ball is moving. We changed how we've been funding it. We've taken on the kind of the 100% piece to the classroom now at one level, and teacher salary increases are going into another allocation from the budget. And that's the other important part. I am now at a level where I'm a subcommittee chairman on the budget committee. So I'm one of the 8 people that gets the first touch on the budget, and I'm one of the 8 people that gets the last touch on the budget. As an educator, I feel like it's a responsibility and an honor to be able to have that voice when we are making those appropriations. And I think if you take a look at my service, you'll see that I've supported public education all the way down the line. I support what happens in the classroom, most of all, those children, their families, and the teachers who support them. I mean, gosh, look at what has happened in the last year. And what would we have done if we didn't have wonderful professionals in the classroom? We've had to rethink everything, and they've had to be nimble, they've had to be on their toes. I, Parents are now starting to realize what all the teachers do too. So that's my platform. I want to support our public education. I want to support the children. It doesn't mean I can't support other education systems. I believe in the children being able to go where they need to go. My sister is a special education teacher. I understand the nuances of what's needed, but I think that if we don't start with what we support in our classrooms in public education, the rest of it really won't matter.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. And you can continue with that dialogue by giving us your opinion of the state of the state of public education in South Carolina today.
I really get disheartened, as many of us do, when we look at the snapshot of testing scores that show one moment in time. And I don't believe they're fair. I don't believe they're indicative of what really happens in a classroom. And I pride myself in knowing what's going on in the classroom. I maintain a good relationship with all the schools in my area, but most importantly, the teachers and the principals. Those folks are the boots on the ground. And I think when you go in and observe, and I'm a 34-year education veteran, so I can go into a classroom and I can observe for 10 or 15 minutes and I can see whether there's good learning going on. I can see whether the teacher is engaged and the children are learning and actively participating in their education. And I don't think a standardized test will ever do that. So I really believe that the state of our education is much higher than South Carolina is given credit for. I think perhaps our children are not those kids who should be taking standardized tests all the time. Maybe they're better at thinking abstractly. And quite honestly, that's probably a good thing because in today's world, look at what we're having to do now. We're not thinking about all the norms, we're thinking how to solve problems that we've never had to solve before.
Mhm.
Critical thinking is really the piece that I think our children have.
Mhm.
Um, the diversity of our school system. You know, teachers are given whatever child walks in the door, wherever they came from. We don't get to pick what background or socioeconomic level they have. We are blessed with that child in our classroom, and we take them from where they are to as far as we can take them on their schedule, not on somebody else's.
Mhm.
And that's another thing that teachers are not given credit for because for all kinds of developmental reasons. Poverty being one of them in our state that we do have. We have areas where children have deficits in early childhood education, and that's my forte is early education. So I think we've really got to look at the holistic picture. I do look at graduation rates, and I wish they were higher. I can't say it's 100% happy. I want to see more children get across that finish line. I think that is a societal problem, not our classroom problem. And
Okay.
I think it's unfair to blame a teacher at that critical juncture. I would love to see, we've got really good ratios in most of our elementary schools, but our middle schools, I think we've got it backwards. We get those classrooms larger instead of smaller, and the hormones are going crazy, and the kids have trouble focusing, and all of a sudden it's a whole different world. I'd love to see middle school drop down in ratios instead of up to give those children who are at that cusp of whether they're going to get it or not make a difference. So I think we're doing quite well, but I think we can do better, and I think that society needs to help us. It's not something that a teacher has a magic wand on in a classroom, although they are critical. Sometimes that teacher is the only person that that child can count on. And,
Absolutely.
and I know I had teachers that made all the difference in my life. I think everybody has an educator along their growing up that they can
Mhm.
remember having a special connection with.
Absolutely.
Every child needs that. So
Absolutely.
we can do better. But I don't like a standardized test. I never have, and I don't think I ever will. I'm much more a portfolio, lifespan, developmental checklist kind of person for the child.
Mhm.
But I think we are also that way for our education system.
Absolutely, absolutely. In the beginning of your of this dialogue, you stated you were proud of where we are in public education. So, if you are reelected, what's the first step that you would take to improve public education? Because you just hit on that. So, expound on that a little bit more.
Well, we've started the ball rolling on our teacher salary increases. We have put $467 million into K-12 education over the last several years. And teacher salaries are now for South Carolina to hit the Southeastern average is it's huge. It's huge. I think we've broken a barrier of legislators understanding that if we're going to attract the best and the brightest teachers and keep them in the classroom, that's the tough part. We're graduating them from college. They're
Hmm.
getting into the schools, and they can't make a living to buy a house or stay in the area where they live. So teacher salaries has got to be, in my opinion, the number one push in our budget. The number two push in our budget is to make sure that the dollars we are giving the school districts actually go to the classroom. I worry about administrative top heavy districts, and I worry about inefficiencies in districts. We did a huge study about some districts being too small, some being too large. There's a sweet spot, and good educators know that when they get the sweet spot in the number of children and their ratio, the classroom runs well. The same thing works for a school and a district. And we've really got to do a better job so that we're really maximizing those dollars to the classroom to support the teacher and the children in that room. The other part is the safety factor. And aren't we staring that in the face with a health crisis right now? Before that, it was violence and making sure our classrooms and our school buildings were safe. We've got an increase of school resource officers in our buildings. We have increased our mental health counselors in our school buildings. And I want to push for more and more of those for the children first, but secondly, for the teachers, because they're spending so much of their actual instruction time having to do those two jobs on top of it. And really, truly, while they probably are capable and wonderful at it, they should really be focusing on the academics and let those other professionals handle what's going on the other side of the coin so that the child is holistically supported. So those are the other pieces. We've pushed money into having school buildings have a fund to fix maintenance and buildings in districts that don't have a large tax base. So that's already moving. I want to continue that and make sure that we continue to shore that up. Not every district is rich enough to build a new school building when they need it. And we've set aside those funds for the State Department to set those up. So I think there's lots of things on the burner that I don't want to let slide off the stove.
Absolutely.
We have started down a critically strong path, and we can't veer off of that. So my reelection, a lot of it is about maintaining and shoring up and to continue to put those funds in those places that we see a huge return on investment. And children and teachers are one of the best returns on investment we have.
Thank you. You've touched on the funding, so let's speak on that. If you are reelected, how would you address funding of public education aside from this? I know you talked about the salaries and the dollars going to specific, well, not specific, but being spread out. That's what I'll say among all districts, because we know that there are some disparities in that. But
There are.
how would you address the funding in public education?
You know, it's a negative so often, and I would say that it's not a negative for those districts that need the funding, and that is the dollars following the child. In those districts where they are less, there's less tax revenue, the dollars going to the children sitting in that classroom would be a truer number than just an allocation of somebody's spreadsheet. And if you look at what we've done in education funding, and it happened while I'm here, and I'm going to take a little credit for bringing the conversation to the table. Poverty makes a weighted difference. Special needs makes a weighted difference. English as a second language makes a weighted difference. Single home families makes a weighted difference. All of these things add up to be critical needs for funding in a classroom. It costs more money to educate a child who doesn't have an affluent family. We just know it. And that's not fair to them. They can't help that. I'd even like to see us re-energize our adult education system and make sure that those adults in those families in those districts get the services they need. Why not put them right alongside their children instead of making them go to night classes? Let's figure a way to make generational education an important factor. But let's support the families. Let's support the families where they're living and let them have the ability to go to the school that is in their neighborhood or down the block or even across the street, where sometimes that's not the school they're zoned in. So teachers aren't afraid of that, by the way. I get really angry when people say, well, teachers are afraid of competition. No, they're not. They compete with themselves in the classroom every single day. They work harder tomorrow than they did today when they see that there's a child in need. We're probably very competitive souls because we're selling education to children. We want to see those gains. We want to see those things move. There's no competition in education when you're working with children and other educators. So I think telling teachers that they are afraid of competition is a cop out. They're
Mm-hmm.
not. It's
Mm-hmm.
about the children and where they're served, and the funding needs to go into the schools where the children are. Now, does that mean we want to see a mass exodus from the neighborhood school because it's not, again, I'm going to go back to that standardized test, right? Because it's not
Mm-hmm.
a school. Let's find a different way of looking at how we really integrate these schools into the community. Is the principal the right leader for the school? Do they need assistance in that school with different services? When we take a child into a classroom, a good, strong professional educator assesses that child. And I've said it before and I'll say it again, and we meet them where they are.
Mm-hmm.
The same goes with the school. You meet them where they are and you help them get to where they need to be, but it's not a one size fits all. So the dollars following the children, not in a scary way that makes money slide out of the schools, but to shore up those children, to meet the needs that those children have. So
Mm-hmm.
when I say money following the child, I'm saying, does that child live in poverty? Does that child not speak English? Does that child have a special need? We all have a learning disability. Every single one of us has a learning disability.
Absolutely.
It's
Absolutely.
just a matter of the size of that learning disability, but it costs more. It costs more.
Mm-hmm.
And if this pandemic has done one thing, it has made people realize how much teachers do for the children in their classrooms and how much children get out of being in their schools with their teachers and their community of friends. And I think our children are sadly missing their buddies and missing their adult um, cheerleaders, and their teachers are their best friends in so many ways. So
Absolutely.
that's for me. You know, we've got to figure out how to make that dollar go across the state in the appropriate way. Right now, it's a kind of a rob Peter to pay Paul, and we have put task force after task force. If we were to say a child in South Carolina of, average is right here, and this is how much it costs them, and then we figure in all those weightings, which we have begun to do, but we really put the right kind of dollars, which again piggybacks on the fact that we've started funding the teachers' salary increases separately than that aid to classrooms used to be called base student cost, because districts were not able to put the matching or the step increase or whatever went along with it. So this year we just put the teaching funding, the teacher salaries, in a separate line item so that districts didn't have the choice to spend it on something else.
Sure. Sure. And to
That makes sure they get the funds.
yes, ma'am. And to piggyback, um, because what the tone that I got from that response is segueing into this next question, which is what does a successful accountability system for education in South Carolina looks like? You were like I said, I felt the tone in your response for that. So can you give your opinion of what a successful accountability system looks like?
It's much more comprehensive than just a checklist.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, a checklist might be a good place to start, but how do we get to the? You can't, just as I mentioned on the standardized test with a child, it is so unfair to sit a child down and have them color in bubbles and think that that's an appropriate measure of their intelligence. I mean, I can't think of a worse way to tell whether a child really understands a concept. The same thing goes with a teacher in a classroom. Um, there's a lot of discussion right now about if children wear masks or teachers wear masks, then the teachers can't see the child's expression on their face and vice versa. Well, that's answering the question for us right there, isn't it? That interaction, that facial expression, those relationships, they're intangibles.
Mm-hmm.
They have to be experienced.
Mm-hmm.
You can't go as a brand new teacher, you have an adept team. You have a group of people that help you go along and get organized and straight and ready to be that master teacher that you can be. They don't walk in and check you on one day. They check you on several. Is there a certification test you have to take? Yes, but it's not the only thing. It's not the only thing. So if we're gonna do some kind of a grading scale of schools or teachers or even measuring our whole system, it must be truly comprehensive and it must be dynamic. It is a fluid system. It's not something that is stuck in one day on, we do 45-day counts and we do, where children are. Those are all great tools. But you almost need to assign folks a task of looking at schools and then, okay, Sunshine, you're assigned to, ABC school today. And I want you to go in and visit and I want you to take your checklist, but I also want you to know what you're looking for. I want to know about teacher interactions. I want to see how the administration interacts. I want to see how the lunch ladies are integrated into the system, because let's not forget about those folks. They're essential. The maintenance and custodial staff, without them, a teacher is lost. You've got to have all of that to make a healthy school, and children pick up on those things. And then, you know what? You've gone and done that. And the next time that school is evaluated, you're not going to be at ABC school. You're going to be over at XYZ school, and somebody new's going to come in ABC school and do the same thing. Well, how about that? Then it's not any bias of one person, and there's no bias of was it just one day in a timeline? I think if we're going to really hold folks to some kind of standard, we owe it to them to invest in what that is, and not just have them fill out another paper in triplicate that defines them for one day at one moment. And education is one of those jobs that you don't get to see how good a job you did until the child is an adult. It's holistic. It builds on each other. It may not click today. I mean, you're a parent.
I am.
You've explained things until you were blue in the face, right? And it didn't make any difference. And then, I don't know, a week, 10 days later, your child says something and you see the light bulb come on and they get it.
But that happens in adults too.
Exactly. That's my whole point.
Because we're learning every day.
If we quit learning, then we're done. We should be teaching lifelong learning and lifelong problem solving. And I think our teachers are. There's only one perfect person that ever walked the earth in my opinion. None of us are perfect. We are a work in progress.
Agreed.
I don't believe in gotchas and grading schools. While we've got to have a standard, agreed. No one, there's not a teacher in the world who balks at accountability. Not one. But they'd like it to be fair. They'd like it to be comprehensive. And I don't think that that's asking too much. Long answer, but I'm pretty passionate about teachers getting credit for the work that they do and the school as a whole being measured, because sometimes you can have a fantastic teacher and maybe what's going on around them is just too difficult for them to deal with and things are not working. Everybody's had a bad work environment somewhere along the way. Sometimes you learn more from the bad places than the good places on what not to do and what to do. And just because the school is going through some trying times doesn't mean it can't turn around with the right chemistry.
That's right.
And it's everybody's fault and nobody's fault, but it's all of our responsibility. Absolutely.
So, those are all the 4 questions, but I do have an additional question to ask. It's no rocket science to see that leadership is very prevalent in these days, all things considered. So as a leader yourself, in your current role representing District 124 and an educator, um, I can see you advocating for the teachers, but how would you, I guess, include other educators when it comes to making decisions, when it comes to taking their voices, but using your voice to advocate for all those voices? I don't know if that makes any
I
sense at
totally,
all.
how am I going to bring what they're experiencing up here, and how do
Yes.
I make sure I'm connected?
Yes.
Well, the biggest thing is, I mean, I don't know about your world, but in my world, in Beaufort, I have really noisy teachers. I have really noisy teachers, and I love that because they
Good.
are immensely passionate about what they do, and they do not mind calling me or emailing me or stopping me in the grocery store. I When this airs, I'll get some phone calls or emails saying, "Why did you say that?" or "What did you?" And I welcome that. Everything, if I've learned one thing about being up here and being in a classroom, is that we're much more effective as team members than we are adversaries.
Mm.
We can always find common goal, and that's what I ask them to do. If they call me with a problem or an issue, I want them to fully explain it to me. I want to hear everything. I want to know what the intricacies are. And then I want them to tell me what they want to see different out of it, because I want to hear their thought process about it. It also helps me realize whether it's a local decision of local government and their school district decision, whether it's a state law that's not working, some kind of standard that the state has put in place, whether it's a federal requirement, or whether it's something that might just be a misinterpretation of something that we can clear up.
Mhm.
So I like to listen first. The second thing is then to do the research on it, bring them back what I know in real data, and try to answer the question with what in the law, what in statute, is this something that you have to deal with or not?
Mhm.
And then we'll build a plan. If it's something that requires legislation, we'll discuss it and figure it out. If it's something that can be a simple phone call for me to ask the right question of somebody so that the teacher doesn't get put in the hot spot,
Mhm.
I'll do that.
Okay.
In fact, I've done that many times. Sometimes I have to ask a question and it brings up something that's happening that people didn't realize were happening. So the other part, though, is to have a good relationship within the district where you serve.
Sure.
I make myself available. I actually met with the folks in Beaufort County early on when we were trying to figure out what might happen with going back to school, and whether or not the e-learning was working. And I said, I'm here. Let's sit down and talk. Let's figure out what the state can do to support you. So I think you've got to make yourself accessible. The
Sure.
other, I care deeply. I care deeply for the children and the families, and I care deeply for the teachers. And the teachers and the administrators, they know that. Two school principals talked to me about the e-learning, about what was going well and what wasn't going well, and asked my opinion on how it was working in other school districts, because I get to have a little bit of a state oversight, not oversight, but big picture of
Right.
it.
I got you.
Yeah. So listening, being available, and bringing them answers, or being their advocate. I'm there for them no matter what. If we have to sit down and have lunch, we've had breakfast, we've had drinks, we've had we whatever it takes. And I love to visit their classrooms, and they know it. So they invite me often, because I can sit and read books to the children, or I can help with a science experiment. And the best part about it is the teachers don't have to worry about me. I can handle their classroom management. I can
Mhm.
keep everybody calm and nobody gets out of it's
Mhm.
I really enjoy it. The children know I enjoy it. And I'm pretty passionate about how we don't leave children or teachers or parents behind. Um, I'll go back on that middle school thing. I really believe that if we're going to tackle our dropout rate, if we're going to increase that high school graduation, uh, we're going to have to look at those middle school grades, because that's the perfect storm. The
Okay.
families who are trying to help their kids get to a point where they can't help anymore, the homework's too difficult and complicated, or work schedule is too much, the work schedules of working more jobs. And in middle school, and I don't know how old your kids are, I forgot to ask you, Sunshine.
8.
Oh, there, you're not there yet.
No.
When you get to middle school, Sunshine, you're not cool anymore.
I
And
don't
it's
think
not.
I'm cool now.
Oh, I bet you are. I bet you are. But at middle school, they don't want you around anymore, and so you have I call it the perfect storm. We've got large class sizes, we got hormones, we've got parents who are kind of pushed away from their kids who are growing in independence.
Mhm.
And you got parents who, for lots of reasons, either from their own educational problems, system might not have worked for them, or they're not able to be there for multiple jobs or other responsibilities. And we just see the breakdown. If you ask the middle school teacher about a kid in 7th or 8th grade, a child in 7th or 8th grade, to predict if they were going to be able to make it, I bet a tuned in teacher could tell you.
Mm,
It's not that we are profiling, it's that we are trying to identify the children who need us.
gotcha.
And if we could focus more on those children who really need us, then maybe we could get them past those critical years of 9th and 10th grade to make them stay and want to stay. And I would love to see that as I can move on through the years here and make an effective change. I want to see more children feel good about finishing and then going on further, whether it's a certificate or technical college degree. I mean, our technical college in Beaufort has hospitality management and culinary arts and welding, and I mean, HVAC. One of those certificates, you can make $100,000 a year.
I know.
I
Hmm.
mean, it's crazy.
But
If you, yeah, I mean, go to a four-year university if you want to, but there's so many jobs
yes,
these.
the
So
trades.
the lifeline, the continuum of learning is what I'm passionate about.
Hmm.
And teachers are the linchpin in that. So I'm always going to be there for them, and I'm always going to have an open ear and an open door, and want to help them and hold hands and get it done together.
Awesome, awesome. Well, thank you so much, Miss Shannon, for the opportunity to speak with you and meet you virtually. On behalf of SC for Ed, we do thank you for the time that you've sacrificed um, to be with me as the parent representative for tonight.
I am thrilled
Like I
to.
said, I'm not an educator, but I'm a parent, so I can definitely advocate from a parental standpoint how important public education is, because I'm a product of public education. And so things are much different now than what they were when I was in school. But I do believe in South Carolina that it will turn around just like you do and many other leaders. Yes,
I
ma'am.
grew up in Florence. I grew up in the quarter of shame. I didn't know. I didn't know that my education system wasn't supposed to be that hot.
Hmm.
Nobody bothered to tell me. I think I turned out all right. You look like you turned out all right.
I turned out just fine.
Exactly. I believe that the education is there if children want it. Sometimes they need a little encouragement to want it, and that takes the right team.
Mhm.
And as I said before, it's no one person's fault, but it's everybody's responsibility.
Absolutely. Is there anything else before we close out that you'd like to say?
I
It's
just would
You've
like
got
to
the
say
floor.
thank you so much. You guys have been a wonderful, active part of the education conversation, and I think that the movement we've seen in the state, at least over the years I've been here, we've talked about it, but it took a really good grassroots effort for many representatives, not just me, to hear from their teachers about how they felt about their classrooms and the children they teach and the needs they had.
Hmm.
So the good positive dialogues, visiting with your house members, knowing how to contact them, contacting your senators, those are all really important to the structure of the government for the people, by the people.
Absolutely.
And I don't know many more important people than teachers.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you again, Miss Shannon. I hope you have a great evening.
Thank you, Sunshine. Good night.
Good night.